If we're hiding ourselves, people don't trust us. They don't even realise it. It's just going on in their head. When something is being hidden, people don't trust as easily. Whereas when there's nothing being hidden, trust is much quicker to build. So from a client relationship and working in teams, and for all of those reasons, authenticity is really powerful for lawyers, I think.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Student Lawyer podcast series. Whether you're at school, sixth form, university, thinking about a career in law, or exploring law careers, you're in the right place. We are the one-stop shop for student lawyers. If you'd like to join the Student Lawyer as a writer, please email hello@thestudentlawyer.com. This episode is sponsored by the University of Law. The University of Law offers a range of undergraduate and postgraduate courses and master's degrees alongside an award-winning pro bono clinic, so you can build up your legal experience while studying. And their experienced career service will enable you to put your best foot forward when launching your legal career. The courses are employment focused and based on real legal practice, so you'll be better prepared for the workplace. Part-time and online study options are available so you can work and study at the same time. Click the link in the description box of the podcast to find out more about the courses on offer. Welcome to the Student Lawyer podcast series. My name's Camilla. I'm a trainee solicitor and I'm going to be your host for today. In today's episode, I'm joined by Hannah Beko, author of the best-selling book, The Authentic Lawyer. As well as being a best-selling author, Hannah is a commercial property lawyer with 17 years experience. She's also a legal business owners coach, trainer, podcast host, keynote speaker on leadership, authenticity, mental health and wellbeing in the legal profession. Hannah is also co-author of Future-Proof Your Legal Career, 10 Core Areas of Professional Development, and head of mission at Legal Studio, which is a role that enables Hannah to help change the culture in law so that stress, anxiety and burnout are no longer normalised in the legal profession. And Hannah is joining us on the podcast today to discuss that very topic. So without further ado, let's welcome Hannah onto the show.
You're so welcome. I'm really looking forward to it.
Me too. Really can't wait to find out all about your career and more about the Authentic Lawyer. So let's get into it. I wonder if you could start off by giving us an overview of your career history.
Yes. So I am one of those, I don't know if it's rare or not rare. I was 13 when I decided I wanted to be a lawyer. So I did one of those polls at school and they spit out what you could do. And I think mine was a doctor, a politician and a something else that I can't remember. And I said, no, I don't want to do any of those things. I want to be a lawyer because I want to have a briefcase, a desk and a computer. And that's it really.
Girl's dream.
Then I went to university, did law straight away. I found myself actually swept along by my friends. I had no idea that you should be some people apply for training contracts sort of second year of university. I just saw my friends doing that and so followed suit. And that's how I got my training contract. And I trained with Beechcroft Wandsboroughs, as was at the time, is now Beechcroft, DAC Beechcroft, where my husband was for a few years. So yes, that's where I trained. I moved across to Eversheds to do property, which I did for about 5 years with Eversheds until I started my family. So when I had my first son, I then became self-employed as a property lawyer. I've done that since 2012. And then in 2016, I started my second business, which was training and coaching lawyers.
So interesting. Such a varied career history. I really, really, really think that's incredible. And so why did you set up your business, Authentically Speaking? And please, could you provide some insight into what Authentically Speaking is and who you help?
So why did I set it up? Because when I needed help for chronic stress and almost burnout, there wasn't anything within the law. I had to go sort of outside law to other business women, other business owners to find out how did they manage to run businesses without working all these hours and, all the stress and everything that comes with it. So I went through that process, that journey, and as part of that decided to train as a coach, just for fun, really, because I really enjoyed the whole coaching process and mentoring process. And then once I trained and actually had to have a few clients to get through the training process, and a couple of them were lawyers, I thought, actually, this is really quite A, good fun, and B, these people are saying I'm changing their life. So why not actually do something with it? So it wasn't initially planned when I went on my journey of getting coaching and mentoring. But as I went through it, I realized that actually I had a bit of a talent for it, and it was very much needed in the profession. So that's why I started it. I remember my business mentor at the time telling me that there's no way lawyers would ever buy support for stress. So that was 2016. And now things are very, very different. The first few years of it, yes, it was very difficult to talk to lawyers about stress. But now, as we all know, it's a huge topic that people aren't pretending about anymore. And so the title, Authentically Speaking, came about because when I was going through this process of working out whether I wanted to and could still be a lawyer, I then had to look at what else I could do, which then involved looking at who I was. And a great coach said to me, what was your 6-year-old self like? Because it's this idea that before the world starts to impact us, that's who we really are. Bar, a few things that might happen to people in childhood. But generally speaking, we are that sort of natural person who's not influenced by judgment and criticism. You'll often see little children who'll just jump up and do their dance or do their performance, and they're not worried about what other people think. And then it's only when you get a bit older that you start to worry about what people think. And that's what happened to me. I got bullied for my accent because I lived in the north, but I'd been born in the south with a Cambridge accent, and living in the north, they didn't like that. So going through all those changes and realizing that I'd sort of lost who I was brought me back to this person who actually did love to speak and teach people and train people and do all these sorts of things that I'd loved to do when I was younger. So Authentically Speaking is about my journey to become who I am more authentically. And it was always about speaking, because it was speaking and training and things. But also it's about helping those other people who want to find who they really are, and I think this goes to your question of who do I work with. It is predominantly lawyers, because I love lawyers. I am one. I'm married to one. All my friends are lawyers. I've spent 20 years working with lawyers, and they need help from, I think, someone who understands them, because it's very difficult for lawyers to sometimes take advice from anyone who they see as doesn't understand the true challenges that we have and we face in our work. And I do understand them because I have them and I've had them, and I co-own a law firm now. So, I'm very much in the everyday of what lawyers face. And so, yes, that's who I help. People who know there could be an easier and a better life. There could be less stress. They could be better at what they do, but with less hard work.
That's incredible. I really like how you lent into your natural strengths, which enabled you to really make a difference, especially the fact that you have got that experience as a lawyer, and it's definitely well needed in the industry. Like you said, it has got better since 2016, but I'm sure there is still work to be done. So what do you think that some of the key issues are at the moment with law firm culture, and how do you think that law firms could tackle these issues from the top down?
I think we're quite aware of what the historical culture issues are in terms of long hours and proving ourselves to one another. There's been in the past a lot of competition. I stayed up till 3 on a deal. Oh, I stayed up till 4 on a deal. Oh, I stayed up all night. Oh, I've worked 3 days on the run. There was this badge of honor. But I do think in most firms that's disappearing now. I think people are understanding just how damaging and dangerous that is. And what I started to ask myself, and I wish I'd done it younger, and I would hope that more of our younger lawyers do this, is start asking, what do I really want? Just because someone else might want to work all those hours, do I want that? Or do I want more time with my family, or more time with my friends, or following my interests, or whatever? I think the problem with the culture is that we can get on a conveyor belt and we never stop to look if we're on the right track and we're going in the right direction. We're just following everyone else until something happens, usually quite major. We don't stop to look. And I think that's the problem with the culture, that we've all just been very led in one direction and never stop to think about what we as individuals really want. And in terms of how firms can manage this top down, I think it has to be role modeled from the top. So it's no good firms saying, oh, we have a good work-life balance culture. We don't expect people to work past 5:30, 6:30, whatever it is, different in different firms. But it's no good to say that if all the leaders and managers are still working, because other people won't feel that they can do that. And it's just like all the wellbeing and mental health trends you see. The amount of juniors that say to me, oh yeah, we have meditation classes at lunchtime, yoga classes at lunchtime. I put them in my diary, but then my boss sits at their desk all through lunch, so I don't feel I can go. So it really has to be led top down. Those leaders have to believe that health, well-being, work-life balance matter and role model it to others.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think as a junior, if you join a firm, even if they set these things up, if you're going to find it quite an intimidating thing to do, and not necessarily something that you feel like is an option to just sort of leave during lunchtime if everyone else is glued to their desks. So yeah, I definitely can agree with that for sure. I think that's really relatable, and yeah, I think that's great advice for law firms. So thank you for sharing that. So your book, The Authentic Lawyer, has a very interesting title. What does it mean to be an authentic lawyer? How can lawyers become more authentic? And what are the benefits of doing so? It's a lot of questions there.
No, and you have to remind me if I forget any of them. This came about by accident, really, a bit like sort of creating the business in the first place and naming it. The book wasn't named until much later, although the concept of it was always there. So the concept of it came one day, and I still remember it, when I was driving down the road near my house into my lovely village, having a panic attack while I was driving. And at the part of chronic stress, that's one of my symptoms. And I remember going through that and thinking, I'm going to write about this one day. I'm going to help other people with this one day. And that's how I got through it, was I am going to get through this and then I'm going to write about it. So that was sort of when the idea of the book was born. And then all the pieces that helped me move from chronic stress to, one business, 2 children, chronic stress, to 3 businesses, 3 children, and not chronic stress. It helped me move through that. And I put everything into the book. But in doing that, the journey I went on, I realized, again, by accident, but what had happened is I looked at what I was good at, who I really was, and brought more of that. And then that brought me more success more easily, etc., etc. And so that's what the message of the book is, really, is how do we go back to who we truly are, or discover or think about or uncover who we really are. Now, why does it matter and why is it good for lawyers? First of all, it matters for mental health and stress levels, because trying to be somebody else is inherently stressful. And also, it's a bit like you said a moment ago, that, I found my strengths and I use them. And the thing with your strengths is that it's not hard work. It's not difficult. I will stand up and do a training or do a workshop or something, and it's my absolute happiest place to be. Like, my husband laughs because I'm bouncing off the walls after it's happened. And yet people will say to me that 2-hour session changed their life, or I did an online version of one of my workshops once for 2 hours, and this lawyer still comes to me and says, I completely changed her life a couple of years ago. And so for me, that is a gift that I want to use, and it's easy for me to use. And that's the point with finding who we are authentically. And even as a lawyer, I've done this in my legal work, which is work with those clients that I enjoy working with, I really want to work with, and I am myself with. So clients who don't want to work with me because they don't gel with me or whatever it is aren't my ideal clients, and I won't work with them. But again, those clients that I am authentic with, most of my clients know that I train and coach and travel about doing workshops, and they ask me about that. Some of my property clients introduce me to other clients as the authentic lawyer because they know about the book. So for me, yes, it makes you happier and healthier and more successful, because you can connect with people better. I really believe that whether it's colleagues at work, whether it's clients, whether it's in networking events, business development, if we're hiding ourselves, people don't trust us. They don't even realize it. It's just going on in their head. When something is being hidden, people don't trust as easily. Whereas when there's nothing being hidden, trust is much quicker to build. So from a client relationship and working in teams, and for all of those reasons, authenticity is really powerful for lawyers, I think.
That's incredible. I didn't think of it like that. But yeah, from a trust perspective, that's just absolutely, revolutionary, really. I mean, it's so important. But yeah, in terms of when you were talking about how you thrive on, speaking and coaching, you obviously thrive off that, but some people might not. So I think it is so important to get to know your strengths. So I think that's great advice. And I haven't finished reading the book yet, but from what I've seen so far, it is packed with actionable tips and guidance. So I can't wait to start implementing some of that. And if the listeners haven't yet checked out your book, I will definitely leave a link to it in the description box of the podcast. So listeners, you can go and check it out if you like.
I'd like to take a moment to speak about the University of Law, which is the university I decided to study my LPC at. The University of Law is the sponsor of this podcast and makes it possible for us to continue bringing these episodes to you. So we really appreciate you supporting us by supporting our sponsors. What really sets the University of Law apart from other universities is its belief in training students for the real world from the moment they accept a place. The University of Law's experienced career service and award-winning pro bono clinics offer students the chance to get real-life legal experience which can boost employability. They offer a range of undergraduate and postgraduate legal training and master's degrees designed by qualified experts to help students excel at any stage of their career. Their courses are employment-focused, honing key skills in a teaching environment based on real legal practice. Part-time and online study options are also available on many of their courses to help students work and study at the same time. If you'd like to find out more about the courses on offer, please click the link in the description box of the podcast.
So what are some of the traits and habits that lawyers need to work on tend to need to work on, and why?
So there's the common ones that, again, weren't necessarily talked about a few years ago, but they're quite commonly talked about now. So you've got the overachiever, you've got the people pleaser, you've got the yes person. We tend to be all of those things. And the problem is that law firms hire for them, people are promoted because of those things. So it almost reinforces that you should always be saying yes, you should always be going the extra mile, all of those things which are and can be so detrimental to ourselves if not in check. So those are a lot of the traits. And I give this a lot of thought, and especially at the moment, I could probably sum up what I think our biggest problem is, or maybe they're linked, maybe they're the same thing. And a lot of people won't believe this, but it's a lack of self-esteem and a lack of self-worth. And that's why we drive ourselves so hard. Why do we have to be the overachiever? Why do we have to be better than anyone else? Why do we drive ourselves so hard? Why does everything have to be perfect? Because we're worried somebody's going to reject us or reject our work or sack us or not instruct us anymore. Why are we so afraid of getting something wrong, making a mistake and thinking it will be the end of the world? And we do. Our minds go to this place that all of these things are the end of the world, and they're not. When you take a step back, when you can see it from an outsider's perspective, it's not at all. So this for me is the biggest problem that I try and work with people on is their self-esteem and their self-worth, because they'll make better decisions.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I was nodding along as you said that, as I can completely relate. Perhaps it's something to do with the fact that, I suppose it's in many professions really, but we have to go to university and then law school and then training contracts. It's like we're constantly being not judged but marked, I suppose, against something. So I think perhaps that's got something to do with it. But yeah, I can definitely relate. And I know that you help lawyers to reduce procrastination as well. What actually causes procrastination, and what are your top tips for beating this? Asking for a friend.
This is such a brilliant question. I love this. I may have to do an article or something about this separately because it's so good. A coach friend of mine once, we were running a training together, and she came out with this, and it was so simple but brilliant. She said, procrastination is a symptom of stress. And I was like, yes, of course it is. Of course it is. So a lot of people say, oh, I procrastinate and I do training on it. And I would say to people, I know exactly what I procrastinate. And as a property lawyer, it's replies to inquiries. I love the beginning of a matter. Like I love the first draft of the lease and whatever. But by the time I've sent it out and someone comes back with questions, I'm not interested anymore. So I will sit and procrastinate over those. So I have developed some strategies, and that will be, and I always say to people, notice what it is you procrastinate over. And that's always half the battle. Realization's half the battle. Taking action is the second half. But even realizing it, then you can come up with a bit of a plan, which for me is either, okay, I know I've got those replies to deal with, so I'll do it at my higher energy time of the day, which for me is the morning. Or if my assistant can deal with loads of it, I'll get it flicked straight on to her so she can start dealing with it, and then I'll pick up the bits I need. So one tip for dealing with procrastination is to start the task, because often when we see tasks as really, really big, we put off starting them. So if we can start it by even saying, right, I'm going to need that information, I'm going to send it to that person to get that information, it starts the ball rolling, which then makes it easier to take the next action. Taking the first action is always the hardest bit. It's like if you sat down to draft anything. The book was one thing, but whether you're drafting, I don't know, a letter, a contract, a report, an article, the first bit is always the hardest. Once you've got started, it's always easier to go back and continue. So that's one tip is what is it that you do procrastinate over? Notice it and have a plan for how you're going to tackle it. Maybe you put it into your highest energy time of the day, and maybe you just do one small step to get it started and diarize the rest. But in terms of other things that cause it, overwhelm is, I would say it's actually overwhelm rather than procrastination at that stage. Because when people say to me, what's the difference between stress and overwhelm? With stress, we can be stressed and carry on working for quite a long time. When we're really in overwhelm, we can't make any decisions. We're looking at all the things we need to do, and that looks like procrastination. So people could call that procrastination, but actually it's overwhelm. It's everything on their list is just there and they don't know where to start. They literally are sat there or stood there or whatever saying, I just don't know which one to start with. And so for me, that's not procrastination, that's being overwhelmed.
Such great tips, honestly. Again, I can relate to all of these, and the advice that you've given is really, really helpful. I can definitely relate to the overwhelm one. Sometimes I just look at my to-do list and think, not sure where to start, and then it kind of makes me a bit paralyzed for a minute. But then I think if I kind of go away and just breathe and just take a break and then come back to it, sometimes it's clearer. And then sometimes in the morning as well, things are a bit clearer. So I guess that means, when the stress levels have reduced slightly. I can definitely relate to that. And how can lawyers maintain a work-life balance? And do you think it's actually possible in this profession, or, is it just a hopeless task?
This is another one. Could just do. Okay. Is it possible? Yes, it is. But I think it's about thinking about it differently. So when I first started my family, and it's the reason I left big law and ended up working for myself, is because I thought balance looked like the scales balancing, 3 or 4 days a week with my son and 3 days a week working. I thought that was the definition of balance. And if I couldn't get it, I was leaving. What I've learned since then, because since I've had my own businesses, I've worked way longer hours than I ever did in practice. What I've learned since then is that balance to me is not about the scales being the same. The scales will always move up and down. Some days work or career will be taking priority. Other days, family or health or hobbies or interests or whatever are going to take priority. And balance for me is about being okay with that shifting. And making sure that it never ends up one too much. If something, if you've been working the extremely long hours for 2 or 3 months, then that's not balance. That's become the new normal. Whereas to work extremely long hours for a week or two might be perfectly doable. So I think I often say to people, lawyers see things in very black and white, whereas grey exists. And I think for work-life balance, that's what it's about. It's about looking at your whole work-life balance, is not just on a day-to-day basis, but on maybe a weekly or monthly or whatever basis. Are you generally happy with how much time you're spending on your work or your career and how much time you're spending in other areas of your life? And that will change as we go through our lives and careers and depending on what stage we're at.
Lovely. Thank you for your insights into that. And what is one piece of advice that you wish you could give yourself at the beginning of your career?
This is really hard for me because I look back and think, what would I have changed? But if I changed it, would I be where I am now? And I wouldn't want to change that. You know, if I had learned stress management techniques sooner, would I have gone on to do all this wonderful work that I have? So it is very difficult to know. I think I would probably tell myself that I shouldn't give myself such a hard time. But no, do you know what? Here's one. I would network earlier. I love networking and business development, which for me is just making new friends, going for coffees, chatting with people, talking, like we are now. I love that. And I wish I'd learnt that earlier and implemented it earlier. So for any of our younger people listening here, it's not big and scary. It's just meeting people. It's just chatting, and do it as soon as you can, because you'll see a massive, it'll be a massive boost for your career.
Fantastic advice. Thank you so much, Hannah. And where can listeners connect with you and read more about just connect with you generally?
So LinkedIn is one of my favorite places. So they should definitely find me on LinkedIn. Do feel free to connect, to follow, whatever you'd like to do. There is a website, authenticallyspeaking.co.uk, and there's various free resources and guides on there. The Overwhelm guide is a particularly popular one. I know we mentioned it earlier. I think you would find it useful as well.
Absolutely.
There is also a YouTube channel. So there's some trainings on there. The Overwhelm webinar training is on there, for example. So that's just Hannah Beko, or even if you typed in Hannah Beko Overwhelm, you'd find that on YouTube. So there's lots of resources and things out there to help. And of course, the book you've mentioned is available on Amazon or free on Kindle Unlimited.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you for that. I will leave links to all of the resources that you've mentioned in the description box of the podcast, so the listeners can go and click through. So thank you again, Hannah, for joining us. It's been great to have you on the show. I've definitely learnt a lot, and I'm sure that the listeners have too. So thank you very much again for joining.
Fantastic. Thank you.
And thank you to all the listeners for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
To hear more of the Student Lawyers podcast, hit the subscribe button and leave us a star rating and review. If you would like to join the Student Lawyer as a writer, please email hello@thestudentlawyer.com.